Welcome to GK Quiz Prime Time. Which Constitutional Amendment Act of India introduced the Goods and Services Tax? Right answer is option B 101st Amendment Act 2016. The word secular, socialist, and integrity were added to the preamble by which constitutional amendment? Right answer is option C 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Which constitutional amendment granted Sikkim the status of an associate state of India? Right answer is option B 35th Amendment Act 1974. The Bodoland Territorial District was included in the Assam Legislative Assembly through which amendment? Right answer is option B 90th Amendment Act 2003. Which amendment increased the retirement age of High Court judges from 60 to 62 years? Correct answer is option C 15th Amendment Act 1963. By which constitutional amendment was the right to property removed from the list of fundamental rights? Right answer is option B 44th Amendment Act 1978. Which constitutional amendment added the ninth schedule to the Constitution of India? Right answer is option A, First Amendment Act 1951. Which constitutional amendment abolished reserved seats for the Anglo Indian community in Parliament and state legislatures? Right answer is option C, 104th Amendment Act 2020. The 91st Constitutional Amendment Act 2003 was enacted to control which political issue? Right answer is option B party defections and size of Council of Ministers. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976 extended the term of Lok Sabha and state assemblies from 5 to how many years? Right answer is option A 6 years. Which constitutional amendment added Dogri, Maithili, Santali, and Bodo languages to the 8th schedule? Correct answer is option C 92nd Amendment Act 2003. Which amendment made a provision for 27% reservation for OBCs in educational institutions? Correct answer is option B 93rd Amendment Act 2005. The constitutional status to the OBC Commission was granted under which amendment? Right answer is option C 102nd Amendment Act 2018. Which amendment extended the reservation of SCs and STs in Parliament and assemblies for another 10 years? Right answer is option B 104th Amendment Act 2020. Under which amendment was Pondicherry added as a union territory in the first schedule? Right answer is option A 14th Amendment Act 1962. Which amendment eliminated the need for a joint sitting of Parliament for electing the Vice President of India? Correct answer is option B 11th Amendment Act 1961. The land boundary agreement between India and Bangladesh was implemented through which amendment? Right answer is option B 100th Amendment Act 2015. Which amendment divided India into 14 states and 6 union territories, removing the earlier fourfold classification of states? Right answer is option A 7th Amendment Act 1956. Which of the following constitutional amendment acts is related to the transfer of the Berubari Union number 12 from India to Pakistan? Right answer is option B, Ninth Amendment Act 1960. Which amendment provided that laws made to implement directive principles under Articles 39B and C cannot be challenged? Right answer is option B, 25th Amendment Act 1971. The economically weaker section reservation was introduced through which constitutional amendment? Right answer is option A, 103rd Amendment Act 2019. The 124th Amendment Bill, which later became the 103rd Amendment Act, provided for what measure? Right answer is option B, 10% reservation for economically weaker sections. Under which amendment could a national emergency be imposed in the entire or part of India? Right answer is option B, 44th Amendment Act 1978. By which amendment were 10 fundamental duties added to the Indian Constitution? Correct answer is option C, 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Under which amendment were 4 additional languages added to the 8th schedule, increasing the total to 22? Right answer is option D, 92nd Amendment Act 2003. Which constitutional amendment act reduced the voting age in India from 21 years to 18 years? Right answer is option D, 61st Amendment Act 1989. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976 is popularly known by which name? Correct answer is option B, the Mini Constitution. Under which article of the Indian Constitution can amendments be made to the Constitution? Correct answer is option B, Article 368. Which part of the Indian Constitution gives Parliament the power to amend the Constitution? Right answer is option C, Part 20. By which constitutional amendment was the right to property removed from the list of fundamental rights and made a legal right under Article 300A? Right answer is option C, 44th Amendment Act 1978. In which constitutional amendment act was the term of the Lok Sabha reduced from 6 years back to 5 years? Right answer is option B, 44th Amendment Act 1978. By which constitutional amendment was Meghalaya carved out of Assam to form a new state? Right answer is option B, 22nd Amendment Act 1969. Which constitutional amendment act made it mandatory for the president to give assent to constitutional amendment bills? Right answer is option D, 24th Amendment Act 1971. By which constitutional amendment act was Mizoram granted full statehood within the Indian Union? Correct answer is option C, 53rd Amendment Act 1986. Under which constitutional amendment act was Arunachal Pradesh granted full statehood? Correct answer is option C, 55th Amendment Act 1986. By which amendment was the official Hindi version of the Constitution provided to the people of India? Correct answer is option B, 58th Amendment Act 1987. Which constitutional amendment added Sindhi language to the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution? Correct answer is option C, 21st Amendment Act 1967. By which constitutional amendment was Sikkim made the 22nd state of the Indian Union? Correct answer is option B, 36th Amendment Act 1975. Which constitutional amendment gave constitutional status to the Panchayati Raj system in India? Right answer is option B, 73rd Amendment Act 1992. Which constitutional amendment provided for 33% reservation for women in local self government bodies? Correct answer is option B, 73rd Amendment Act 1992. By which constitutional amendment was Dadra and Nagar Haveli incorporated into the Indian Union as a union territory? Correct answer is option B, 10th Amendment Act 1961. Which constitutional amendment merged Goa, Daman, and Diu with the Indian Union? Right answer is option C, 12th Amendment Act 1962. Which constitutional amendment allowed the same person to be appointed as the governor of one or more states or union territories? Right answer is option B, 7th Amendment Act 1956. In which constitutional amendment was the maximum strength of the Lok Sabha fixed at 545 members? Right answer is option C, 31st Amendment Act 1973. By which constitutional amendment was the representation of union territories in the Lok Sabha reduced from 25 to 20 members? Correct answer is option C, 31st Amendment Act 1973. Which constitutional amendment act reduced the number of fundamental rights from 7 to 6? Correct answer is option C, 44th Amendment Act 1978. In which constitutional amendment was Delhi officially renamed as the National Capital Territory of Delhi? Right answer is option B, 69th Amendment Act 1991. The first amendment to the Constitution of India was made in which year? Right answer is option B, 1951. By which constitutional amendment was it provided that the total number of members in a state legislative council shall not exceed one third of the total members of the Legislative Assembly? Right answer is option B, 7th Amendment Act 1956. By which constitutional amendment act was the 11th fundamental duty added to the Indian Constitution? Right answer is option C, 86th Amendment Act 2002. Stay updated, stay ahead. Subscribe for more current affairs and competitive exam prep.